Hello everyone, welcome back to On the Fly. Today we're projecting the team representing Canada at the 2025 Four Nations Faceoffs. Before we get into it today, this roster will become official at 6:30 p.m. tonight, along with the US. At 2 o'clock, it'll be Finland and Sweden. Then at 7 o'clock p.m. tonight, that is December the 4th, we will be going live on this channel, breaking down all of the official results from the roster. So be sure to come back, stay tuned, hit the notification bell, hit the subscribe button so you never miss when we go live. But let's talk about it. It is time to talk about Canada. And one of the favorite things to do on this channel is watch them win. Are they going to do that this year? We'll see. Obviously, not necessarily the favorites heading into this tournament. I think that belongs to the US in terms of firepower alone. But at the same time, this Canada team has the ability to play very offensive hockey. Their team is going to be very much designed around their offensive side. The goaltending and defense we'll get to in just a few minutes here. But we'll start with who is already on the team. So back in June, 6 players were named to the team. And of course, those 6 players were Brad Marchand, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, Nathan McKinnon, Braden Point, and Cale Makar. So pretty obvious candidates to go in that top first 6. I don't think there's anyone really disputing those 6 players. But now it's time for the projections. And these are my predictions of who's going to be on the team. If I was in charge, this would be on my team. So we'll start here with Matt Barzal, Steven Stamkos, Travis Konechny, Matt Duchene, Mitch Marner, Sam Reinhart, Mark Scheifele, and Mark Stone. So there's a few ways to go about making this team. And for me, I just chose, you know what, straight up, let's go firepower for firepower. Score as many goals as possible, because the truth is on the back end, that goaltending, which we'll get to in a second, is going to be a little dicey at times, especially when you play teams like the US. I think this is going to end up becoming a shootout, and I think as far as this game is going to go, you know, you have all these players, even the defensemen, which we'll get to in a second, are going to be very much designed around the offensive side. You can pick a lot of different ways to go about this. So we'll start here with some of the players I left off on the forwards, which we could argue for, you know, sort of that defensive more style. So guys like Nick Suzuki, Robert Thomas, Alexis Lafreniere, Bedard a little bit. I have problems putting Bedard on this team. I think in the end he'll likely be on it, whether that's through an injury or that's through something else. But just what we've seen this far in the season from him, I have problems putting him in the lineup right away. You know, give him a couple years, I think he'll be there. But just right now, I'm having a real tough time putting him in. Other players like Zach Hyman as well, sort of that next guy in line. Say there's an injury that pops up, I think a guy like Hyman's likely that next guy in. John Tavares is another one who I think could probably fill in somewhere there if they go down a center. But of course, that becomes the question of how do you want to build this team? And for me, I want to power this team with offense just because of the question marks in net. And I think when you look at the defensive side too, you know, a lot of the defensemen aren't necessarily your most defensive-minded defensemen. They're going to be a lot of attacking defensemen who are able to play both sides of the game. Obviously, you need that as a defenseman, but they are able to jump into the rush and really aid the attack. So I think in terms of that, for Canada, offense is going to be the key to this one. So that's why I put guys like Steven Stamkos in. Sure, Stamkos hasn't had a great year to this point, but of course not has Nashville for that matter. But I think in the end, you know, you want those kind of players, like a guy like Matt Duchene, who might not necessarily be your first pick on a Canadian team, but we've seen what he's done so far this year, lighting the lamp on basically both sides, right? So with all that in mind, it's important to take a note what Canada needs to do to win. And in my eyes, that's score more goals than the other team, not necessarily what's coming in on the other side. So in terms of the forward group, the other option is, so you have your offense, you have your defense, and the third one is line chemistry, which is one of the hardest things to build at these international tournaments. So some of the players left off that I think you could go for if you're going for the line chemistry is guys like, you know, Carter Verhaeghe, Sam Bennett, who play together in Florida. Guys like Tampa with Anthony Cirelli or Brandon Hagel. You know, those are the kind of guys you're looking at to really, if you're going for line chemistry, which is one of the hardest things to build. You know, you always hear about it, finding players that have either played together in the past or play together currently, just to be able to help aid the team. And I think that's where, you know, those guys might be able to sort of take those bottom 6 roles. Because when you look at sort of the general outline of this team, you know, you have your top 2 lines already 5 players of that top 2 with Marchand, Crosby, McDavid, McKinnon, Point, so it's going to be tough to kind of work around that. But I think in the end, those other, 8 players are going to be, how are you going to fill in those gaps? So it will be interesting to see how they go about doing this. I would not be surprised, to see them go with the line chemistry and take the Florida and take the Tampa guys. Wouldn't be surprised to see them go the defense route either if they want to try and, play. We're gonna defend really well against these teams. But I think in the end, the offense is the way to go for this Canadian team. Will very much be interesting to see what they do tonight once the rosters do become official. But nonetheless here, move on now to the defense. And this is one that I don't know if there'll be that many arguments about. Maybe the last 2 guys we'll talk about here. So we'll flip it up here now. So we have obviously Cale Makar already on the team. Devin Taves, Evan Bouchard, Josh Morrissey, Shea Theodore, Mackenzie Weegar, and Jared Spurgeon. So I've had a tough time putting together these last two spots because obviously there's other guys. There's Thomas Chabot, Chris Letang, Noah Dobson, Chris Tanev as well, who can really fill that sort of bottom pairing role. For me, in the end, Weegar and Spurgeon were my picks. I just think, back to the whole point, you got Spurgeon who can play a little bit of both. I think he's probably your best bet. This would be that shutdown pairing almost with Weegar, who I think is going to provide a little bit of that offensive punch that I think this team kind of needs. And we'll see in the long run what kind of goes on here. I would not be surprised to see them switch any of those 2 players out. I think Theodore, Morrissey, Bouchard, Taves, pretty much a lock. Obviously, Makar's already there. So that sort of last spot on the team, I think, will be interesting to see, whether or not they go for more of a defensive route, whether they go for more of an offensive route, or whether they just go all-around players, which I think is what they're going to try and do here, which is why, obviously, I put Weegar and Spurgeon on. But in the end, it very well could be any of the other 4 players. It's just going to come down to which path does Canada want to go with? Do they want to go the offense? Do they want to go the defense? Or do they want to go with the chemistry? And obviously, there's not a lot of chemistry in terms of the defense, but at the same time, very well could be, putting all the Florida guys together or putting all the Tampa guys together, or putting, Leafs together, putting Islanders together, right? At the end of the day, it's all going to come down to what do they want to do. If you're looking at chemistry specifically, I think Letang is probably, that best pick. Obviously, he's played for the Canadian national team for years now. So now it's just a matter of how do they want to go about doing that, rekindling old line chemistry, obviously already playing with Crosby. So could be interesting to see. I don't know what's next in terms of the defense. It's one of those last 2 spots are really up in the air. And same with some of the forwards, guys like Stamkos and also guys like Duchesne. Those spots could very well go the other way and go for, 2 Tampa guys or 2 Florida guys. So really it's going to be interesting to see how the Canadian team tries to work that one out. And once again, really up in the air. But I think there's no more thing up in the air in terms of positions than the goalies. And I'm going to take 3 guesses at who the 3 goalies are going to be. And I think it's one of those situations where I could be very, very wrong and not get any of the 3. And I think that's one of the biggest problems with this team is their goaltending, which is why they need to focus on their offense so much, just because, you might get a hot goaltender going into it, which I think is going to be the trick for this Canadian team, is heading in and seeing who the hot goaltender out of the 3 you pick at this point in the season, 2 months down the line, who's riding in hot, I think will end up being the starter for this team. So I'm going to pick the 3 goalies I got is Adin Hill, Jordan Binnington, and Logan Thompson. So, not necessarily your goalies that you're saying, okay, that's my Carey Price, or that's my, my Hellebuck, or my Allmark, or my Markstrom, or my UC Saros, right? Not necessarily those goaltenders that is like, okay, we're good. But rather, we're in a goaltending situation that, frankly, is a major question mark heading into a tournament that's going to be designed to see who can keep the puck out of the net, in my eyes. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to the Canadian team. How do they want to go about solving that? For me, it's 3 goaltenders you pick off based on, how they've done so far this year, how they've done in previous years, what their general outlook is. So for me, if I have to pick a starter right now, it's probably Binnington, I guess. Like, maybe Aiden Hill. Like, or do you go with guys like Talbot? Or obviously Joey Decourt has a passport issue right now, so what's the deal with him? That also becomes a question mark. Can you bring him back later on? Stuart Skinner's there too, right? Like, there's all these goalies that you can pick between that eventually is going to work itself out. Maybe guys get hurt. Maybe that's how you can get your other goalie in. Just way too many question marks in my eyes for this goaltending staff. And I really do think at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, who rides the hot hand coming in to that February tournament. And it's the one problem with picking, goaltenders and teams 2 months before the tournament starts, is you really don't know who it's going to be. But in general, this Canadian team is poised for at least second, I think. Makes sense. First, I think, is going to go to the U.S. in the long run. But at the same time, I think it's very well possible that you take, you can always find a way to grab that first spot. I think Sweden's a team you should never count out. I think Finland's a little bit out of it. But at the same time, you can't count any of these teams out, because eventually they'll find their way back. But with that, if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. If you'd like to drop a like, if you really like, subscribing, tell all your friends, and comment down below your thoughts on Team Canada. Until next time, see you.